What's going on, fellow A-plusers, fellow Force users? It's your boy, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new live episode review of The Acolyte, as we're going to get into episode number 7, the penultimate episode of this particular season, as we've got one more episode left. Even though we don't have the full council today, we got half a council, and that's certainly good enough for us. It is I, your boy, Adam Perez, and of course, joined by none other than Will Polk himself from Cena Nerd. What's up, Will? Good to see you, buddy. How you doing, man?
What's up, Adam? How you doing tonight?
Excellent, excellent, man. I had a long day at work. Today's
Yeah,
been one of those days, man. I
yeah, I hear you, man. It's been one of those weeks for me as well.
I had a ton of terrible traffic just getting to work today. I think they shut down the highway, and then on the way home today, I wound up getting a flat tire.
Oh,
So I had to change that out. And so yeah, it's been one of those days. But I had the opportunity to watch the Acolyte twice. So I
oh,
feel like
that's good.
I feel like I'm pretty prepared for
Good
tonight's
deal.
episode. What about you, man? How's your day been so far?
So far so good. Very, very hectic Wednesday, but yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch the Acolyte last night because we were recording our House of the Dragon and Boys review. So I watched it this evening, and yeah. So if you go to our channel wherever you get your podcast to listen to that. Of course, obviously, don't notice it's the Acolyte review, but I think House of the Dragon this week was definitely lived up to the billing in every sense. So
Yeah, dude.
go check out our thoughts on it on our channel.
Guys, I do see we have a couple of people watching us live here today. Look, at the end of the day, these are just our A-plus opinions in regards to this week's episode. We always want to know yours, so feel free to certainly chime in the comment section wherever you're watching us. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying our Star Wars discussion so far. It is just myself and Will. I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, that we have the entire council as of next week for the finale here. I've really been enjoying our conversations, Will, to be honest with you, man.
Definitely.
This has been a
Yeah.
really fun time. We might have to make this a norm for some Star Wars stuff going forward, but we'll see how it turns out. But man, you know, look, we are one more episode to go. This is in fact the penultimate episode. Um, I want to get your thoughts first. I
Okay.
was let me just say this real quick before you say anything. I wish this episode wasn't the penultimate episode.
Yep.
I feel like this episode could have been anywhere else in this season, but the way that this episode ends, it does have me questioning what exactly are we getting for the final episode. So I do wish that this was not the penultimate episode. It just feels like this would have been fitting somewhere else. But with that out of the way, any thoughts on that? And please give us your overall thoughts on episode 7.
Yeah, well, thanks again as always for having me. I definitely enjoy talking Star Wars with you and the rest of the Jedi Council here on A Plus. And that was one of the bullet points I actually did have as far as my opening thoughts about this episode. In that, what I thought about our discussions earlier this season, where we were thinking that we would get the book. We knew we would get A and B. We got in episode 3 told from Osha story. Thought maybe in the we may get the second part of this from May's perspective or the Jedi's perspective, and of course we did get at this week in episode 7 of Choice. But I really thought that the name Choice was the appropriate name for this episode for many reasons. One, both in universe and also also from the creative side as well, as far as the showrunners and as far as how they've structured this series. And as far as in universe with the show itself, it really we see all season we have seen the ramifications of choice, which what happened 16 years ago on
Mm-hmm.
Brendok.
Mm-hmm.
And we really, so we really with the four Jedi and the choices that they made, and I really think that I know I've seen a lot of people down on this episode, and I was I felt I, I felt like, and it's the critique we've had all season. Getting to my second point, which is choice. for the show runners themselves, I really felt like, again, this show has so much potential. They really mined so many cool things. And I agree with you by putting some of they should have had this episode earlier in the season, because whenever you get to the penultimate episode, you don't want to be opening up more questions. You really want to start bringing in everything to get all the various threads that you have put out there. You really want to start to tie those threads up. And I do feel like in some respects they did, but on the other hand, I feel like there's also opened up a whole nother round of choice questions and all that. So to the point where I'm just like, okay, we only have one episode, and honestly, one probably 28 or 30-minute episode of that to like tie up all these things that they have like put out there. And especially the big reveal that we got in this episode, with Indira's choice. And I do want to go deeper into her choices that she made. But yeah, but literally it was a choice by the showrunners to go this route, and I think it has they had a lot of good parts, but and I won't give a full judgment on the whole until after I watch episode 8 next week. But um, there's definitely places where I think they could have taken some of these okay faults and okay episodes and really taken it to the next level.
How did you feel about this particular episode?
I right down the middle.
Uh-huh.
You know, at this point with this series, I think I even said it a few weeks back. You know what you're going to get, and I don't get at this point. I didn't. This episode didn't bother me. I know I've seen some reviewers and some of the dialogue on it today where they were just ripping it apart. But it didn't. I mean, we'll give our grades later. But I it was you know it was, it, I enjoyed aspects of the episode, and also there were some parts of it that really frustrated me. So it's pretty much is holding true to my feelings for how this series is going for me all season.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, I have seen a lot of people dumping on episode 7 too. I don't feel that way when I watch the episode
Yeah.
itself though. I mean, it is one of those things where I would agree with you. Maybe we've just gotten accustomed to our cons kind of popping up in every episode a little bit. They're becoming repetitive a little bit in the sense of sometimes the writing is clunky. The dialogue. Like for me, when I think of the Acolyte, I like heavy-handed dialogue. I like dialogue that's dense in nature. That when they give monologues or we have dialogues, we're really learning something in a lot of conversations, or each conversation is super meaningful. It does feel like it's a little bit of animated kind of storytelling, a
Mhm.
little bit, and I think we've brought that up before. Like
Yeah.
this has aspects of Andor, but on a certain side, when it comes to like the dialogue and the story beats, it feels very Ahsoka at times, right? And
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
it is an interesting balance that we see here in this series so far. But maybe I've just gotten accustomed to the clunky writing and
Yeah.
the bad dialogue at times.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
real quick before I give my thoughts, real quick, shout out to John Davis. I appreciate you certainly coming through. He says it's one and done, if not canceled early. They killed off 3/4 of the cast. These were the people who went out and promoted it. It's a trope of sci-fi. If you kill off the lead, series is done. What's up, Scene and Nerd? I'm assuming that's probably Sarah, or is that you? That's you?
That's me. That's me.
That's you? I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
John's covers. He's been kind enough to follow some of my Star Trek reviews too. So
Awesome. Well, it's good to see you, John. Appreciate you stopping by today, man. Yeah, we'll see. They haven't renewed or renewed us for a season 2. We have talked about this before. Like, I don't know who they're gonna get for season 2. They gotta have a whole new cast sort of introduced for us if we ever do get ourselves a season 2. Leslie Headland has talked about that this season will have a definitive end to it, but that she has 4 or 5 other mysteries she you would like to explore in a potential season 2 or going forward. So we'll see what Disney decides to do if they greenlight a season 2. I will definitely agree with you, and I think there's some story beats that I will be fascinated to talk with you about. But as far as my overall thoughts, I just don't hate on this episode as other people I feel like have been. I really enjoyed the opportunity here to kind of see the other perspective here. The fact that a lot of us have complained, hey, we never got to see Kalnaka, we never got to see Carrie Ann Moss as Master Indara. Like, this is the episode, and I think Carrie Ann Moss certainly delivered in here. I really enjoyed seeing her opposite of Lee Jung-jae, and just sort of their struggle and how they envision what it means to certainly be a Jedi and balancing your feelings out and what should we do in this kind of conversation or in this situation. So I kind of enjoyed the intensity that these two actors wind up bringing especially when they got into sort of those confrontational modes in here. But the fact that we get to see and get really a feel for who these characters are and their personality traits from like 16 years ago, and really kind of seeing what led them to this point was really fascinating for me. I think the same guy or the same person that directed episode 3 also directed this. So we did have a little bit of a connective tissue in here. And I could definitely feel that watching it. If anything, I will say I really enjoyed kind of seeing the fact that Soul got to see a lot more than I think we even assumed as an audience because of how episode 3 was certainly told. The fact that literally this man winds up scaling the wall of this area and like snooping around, getting the opportunity to not only see the witches prepping for the ascension, but also get an opportunity to see May and Osha kind of training and whatever the case may be. So I found it kind of enlightening to see exactly how much Soul really did witness. And I thought that they really also did a good job of setting up these characters into letting us understand the position that they find themselves in here, right? Like, we always question, why is Kalnaka in the woods? Maybe because of the fact that he's ashamed that he literally tried to kill his Jedi,
Mhm.
his Jedi friends here, allowing himself to be mind controlled by witches and literally trying to kill and harm some of his best friends. If anything, that would probably bring some level of, I need to kind of stay away. Maybe I can't kind of control myself. And we clearly see that he's ever since that moment clearly been obsessed with what's going on, because we see all the ascension and the tattoos and the symbols and stuff when we get to his planet also. So he definitely has been in the weeds, not, no pun intended. But also the idea of Torben kind of carrying around a bunch of shame for his actions,
Mhm.
getting the opportunity to see that while he technically was not the one to kill anybody, he does draw his lightsaber, right? Like, he doesn't bring any sort of level of peace to the situation. If anything, getting the opportunity to see where his mind is at, the idea that this guy hasn't eaten clearly in days. He's been on this planet for 7 long weeks. He wants to go home. The man literally has been mind effed by one of the witches, right? Like, he's clearly not in his right mind. And he's the one that kind of goes off and really kind of sets things in motion until Saul really takes things to the next level. So if clearly he's going to be having some level um, uh, of responsibility as to what winds up happening here. And so I'm glad that they kind of showcase that a little bit as well. And really the guilt that Soul has kind of been carrying around in regards to his particular actions, and maybe not necessarily thinking straight and really causing this situation to kind of go down. And so
Mhm.
look, I really enjoyed this episode in the sense that this really came across to me, Will, as like one big misunderstanding,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
one big cluster F of
Yep.
people making assumptions they shouldn't have made because they didn't quite understand either the culture or what these people were doing. People let their emotions certainly get the best of them. You
Yep.
know, kids giving you information out of context, and you
Mhm.
realize that look, both sides at the end of the day made some really terrible decisions, and it really came down to just a huge casualty based off of it being really a huge sort of misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are I really enjoyed the episode. I don't want to say I really enjoyed it, but I had an enjoyable time watching the
Yeah.
episode in regards to filling in some of the blanks, answering some of the questions that I certainly had, and getting the opportunity to see somebody like Carrie Ann Moss act alongside Lee Jung-jae and give two really great performances in here. And yeah, I will get into our light side and our dark side a little bit, but overall, I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think we did get some answers, and one thing I did like about this episode, even though they did retell almost beat for beat
Yeah.
the episode 3 with the girls, I'm glad they didn't focus on the twins.
Yes.
They really did focus it from the Jedi perspective and the witch's perspective as far as the adults. And I think that was those points were where I was like, okay, I'm really vibing with this episode. And like I said, those are the parts that really, there, like I said, there are elements of it. Like, for example, we all were, many of us were going down the path of thinking that they were deconstructing the Jedi and making them all throughout the season there were like points as far as like man, the Jedi are evil, the Jedi are like what usually supposed to be the noble people of the galaxy, but then but they're having all these like petty things and that kind of stuff, and there still is that, but also but some of that like, is like you said is from misunderstandings, but some of it is because of choices.
Mhm.
And then one I met with Endura, which I guess probably will fit into my dark side, is the the um the flip flop that she has from being straight and narrow. We got to check everything by the council as far as like let me whenever they were deciding whether or not to test the girls or not for the M count, which is funny when they were.
I thought they were gonna say
I guess
midichlorians.
not. Well, I don't want to. I don't know if Lucasfilms will like will come after, or George Lucas will like come after me for for a fee, because that's the only thing I can figure why they didn't like use metachlorines. Either that or they were just like we let's just ADR this so we don't get more shit about metachlorines. but um, but with with that, and then later in the episode, she's actually the one who like decides
Mhm.
to come up with the cover story. So part of me was, that that gets to what I said earlier. I I would buy it if they had just let it build more. It's just, it's that's been the big frustrating thing for me with the series is the choices that were made just felt unearned in this
Mhm.
episode,
I get you.
because they didn't set things up to like what made her go from like Saul, we have to check back in with the council, to now Saul, the truth is, May started the fire.
Mhm.
And there was just like some gap there that they just needed to fill in. I mean, fill in the pieces to make it seem more believable why she made that change of decision. After with all the things that went down at the Coven.
I totally agree with you. I think if there was any like really glaring situation, it was definitely that one for me.
Mhm.
I was definitely kind of surprised that that was her decision, and I'm glad that you brought up the idea of it not necessarily being earned, because I do think that they could have easily have shown it earned in this episode, but they clearly didn't. They decided not to. So
Yeah,
when I think of Indara's change here, I'm under the impression that she now also feels that she's culpable for what happened because of the fact that she killed those witches trying
yeah,
to free Kalnaka, right? But there's something that Indara could have expressed that a little bit better, And I think similar to what they did with Padawan Torben in here, where they kind
Mhm.
of went into his
Yes.
mind,
Yes.
and you see the temptation of him wanting to go home and them trying to
Yeah.
bring him in and stuff, right? Like, I would have loved to have gone into Indara's mind in that moment
Mhm.
when she mind melds with Kelnaka, and she's trying to disconnect herself from the witches. Like, if they had
Yeah.
given me a very similar scene from what Torben went through to same thing with what Indara went through, and then easily had maybe the witches implying something to her of like, maybe you should have done something about this situation, right? Maybe you should have handled, like, trying to
Yeah.
tempt her while she's trying to break things apart. Then maybe when we get to that particular moment, we can say to ourselves,
Yeah.
I can see why, but
Yeah.
it's again, like you mentioned, right? The choices that they made in here could have added 2 extra minutes to this episode,
Yeah.
but would have earned
Yeah.
and had us as a viewer understand that flip flop of a situation outside of. I mean, I get it because she killed witches, but
Yeah.
you gotta explain it better than that.
Yeah, yeah, and it is, yeah, and it's just like it's all as we were talking about it here. It's like even within the show, like with the different philosophy between Indara and and um
So,
blanking on his name, Saul. Yeah, I was thinking Lee John Jay, Saul. Yeah, um, their approach, it really it's like show versus telling. And whenever
mm,
whenever we were bringing up about Tobin. The whole philosophy there, as far as why he doesn't have a Padawan versus she does. And it was in her situation, she's like her philosophy is have the student figure out for themselves. Saul is like, I'm gonna tell it to you, and it's not, and it was as I was watching it real time, I was like, this scene captures this show perfectly. We have Saul over here who is like spoon feeding him, and then we have Endura over here like as we discussed this with this scene with the choices and her switch, trying to have us figure it out. And I guess that just seems like the push pull that's been in in this series all 7 episodes. It's like, do we show the audience or do we tell the audience?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It definitely has been a push and pull because that's something that we've been bringing up almost every episode when we've been
Yeah.
doing our reviews. Shout out to John again. He says, "Hey, Adam, I completely agree. These are the kind of mistakes that lead to major wars. I'm betting this is the start of the Jedi Dathomir Witches War."
Mm. Yeah, they did
Interesting.
have a Night Sister drop there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they certainly did. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And let's talk about this noble mission that we wind up having here. As we come to find out why they were on the planet in the first place. That apparently, according to the Jedi, they were sent to locate a Vergence in the Force.
Mhm.
They do say it's a concentration of Force energy centered around a location, and so believes a Vergence should be protected. So this is kind of a little bit of a tease as to one, the idea of the virgin birth, if you will, of Anakin Skywalker a little bit. It does have some great foreshadowing in the sense that clearly the Jedi are aware of what virginces in the Force are, even 100 years into the past, a little bit. Clearly, Soul either understands prophecy or the Jedi are still rather big in regards to their prophecy and understands the importance of locating one.
Mhm.
I do love the idea that they said that they believe Brendok will answer that question, considering how life began on that planet. They did mention the idea of it having a hyperspace disaster and kind of destroying this world, and it's now kind of sort of back, having life and whatnot. So it seems as though the witches and the Jedi clearly both recognize that something very special about this planet as to why
Yeah,
they're certainly here.
yeah,
And it seems as though the witches have in fact utilized this location to manipulate the Force, artificially wind up sort of creating a Vergence in here. How did you like sort of the explanation of all that? And did it connect any further tissues for you in regards to just May and Osha and how that kind of all came together?
it was, again, that was another high point for me as far as they did answer the question how the twins to come into being. I mean, basically, they are essentially one being, and and they I guess they're split them somehow.
Yeah, I think
And
Indara
it makes
mentions she says
yeah,
split one consciousness into two bodies. That was
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So, and I guess that kind of does I guess an in-universe thing to like back to the why Soul wasn't able to like suss out that May was on the ship last week.
Ah, you know what? That might answer it, right? Because technically they're literally identical.
Yeah,
Wow, okay, wow. Okay, I'm glad you put that together. I didn't wow, that it really explains a lot.
yeah. I mean, it was just one of those things. I mean, and I may be completely off base on that, but I just think, I just may be trying to be charitable for
Right.
the
Yeah,
show.
no, no,
But,
I get what
but
you mean because I think I still am under the impression that he caught the difference,
mhm,
but I do think that that might add to something. Honestly,
yeah,
I do think you're onto something.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, but again, tying things to the lore. I know you're a high. I think you've read some of the books in the High Republic. So the 100-year thing with the space lanes. Yeah. And did they bring that up with the in Ahsoka or something with the Fergil as far as like why they had or I can't remember if there's
I
some other
can't.
reason like with hyperspace or maybe I'm mixing Star Trek Next Generation because I know there was a time when they couldn't use warp drive because of like the towards the fabric warp around too much mess with the subspace but there was the tie-ins to the lore, especially like you said with Anakin for sure. Yeah, and really the I guess speaking of the noble mission, it gets back to what we discussed way back at the beginning, uh, with the Jedi and how they see their place in the galaxy to sort of
Mhm,
keep order and again, and I do like the sort of the allegories that they were trying to go here in this show, as far as just like having the protectors, keep things how they should be, and if there's anything else, anything else that diverges from that is wrong, and Chimera mentions that too,
mhm.
in another episode. So later whenever some may say that may y'all may call it the Sith. He didn't identify himself as a Sith. It was a Jedi that calls it that. So
Mm, mhm.
so it's so all those little things that they have built, that they've established sprinkled throughout the season. uh, Gets back to my point. Yes, even though part of me is sort of like, man, I wish they had put this episode earlier, they did start to pull some of those threads together in this penultimate episode of the little, you know, breadcrumbs they sprinkle throughout the season.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting too, you bring that up, like going back and rethinking about episode 3 when we talked about it, we talked about the idea that that episode was really told from the perspective of May and Osha and really the
Mhm,
witches, right? And
mhm,
so you automatically have sort of a negative outlook on the Jedi. And when we saw the Jedi kind of come into their place for the very first time, right? One of the comments we made was like, I'm pretty sure the idea of Jedi coming into other people's towns and trying to find force sensitive people, like it probably doesn't really happen like this, but this is what they
mhm,
want you to believe, that they're just there to kind of pick up the kids. And one of the was it Mother Anasea, she mentions the idea of like, why the Jedi are here in the first place. And
yeah,
Indara mentions, oh, we didn't think that this planet was inhabitable. And then she says, oh, the Jedi, how, I find it hard to
mhm,
believe that you wouldn't know. But they really didn't know. Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
really didn't know. And so I love that it was really clarified in here that they really don't believe that there's any life on this planet. And just the idea of Soul happening to come across actual people. This is really the first time in 7
mhm,
weeks that they've seen anybody.
yeah,
So again, I do think that it does a great job at giving you a completely different contrast of perspectives from episodes 3 to episode 7. Some people can come out of this episode saying again, they're just making the the Jedi look bad or that they're bad guys. I just don't see that at all. And my thing is, maybe if you have the Jedi on a high pedestal in the sense of like they're Jesus or
Right.
God and they're perfect human beings, then yeah, then I can understand why you would feel that sort of way. But outside of the very wisest of Jedi, I really see Jedi as fallible characters.
Yeah.
I like my characters to have issues or things that have, weaknesses that really can kind of get exposed or have to see them kind of overcome a little bit. And
Mhm.
so, I don't look at the Jedi being presented as bad so much as the idea of like they're not perfect. They
Right.
make mistakes as much as we do. Not everybody can be a Yoda or an Obi-Wan and make all certainly the right decisions.
Yeah.
And we've seen plenty of Jedi kind of fall to the dark side before as well. So, you know, I I I I just, like I said before, I think it's just clearly a misunderstanding,
Yeah.
terrible choices made based off of really bad assumptions, and we find ourselves here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
y-
At the end of the day, I mean, I think that's really at its core what this season's been about. And maybe shame on us as fans or we're expecting, something more, but at the same time, shame on the showrunners for not structuring it in a way that, um, you know, where it wasn't so clunky in its execution.
yeah, I would agree with you there. You talked about one of the things in this episode that made you scratch your head a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I did have a moment in here when Torben finds out that the girls are Vergence, and Homeboy literally jumps on a speed bike. He's like, I'm gonna go get them. I need to
Yeah,
get the hell out of here. I don't want to go back to Coruscant. And he
yeah,
just jumps on his bike. I'm like, what?
yeah.
Like for me when I first watched it, I was like, damn, like as a Jedi, like this man is just ready to go. Like he's just
Mhm.
ready to go back home and just cost his team everything just to get these girls no matter what, sort of thing. But then when I rewatched on the second watch, I don't know if I blame Torben so much in the sense of making that choice because of the fact that these witches did mind F him. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
yeah.
they really did leave this kid sort of shaking in his boots. I mean, when
Mhm.
they get back to the ship, he's sitting there like just sulking as his master's kind of looking at him, clearly having been distraught. And then even when he is sitting outside and Soul is patiently waiting to hear back from what the council says, he's just like, can we go? Can we go? Like, they're dangerous. They're dangerous, sort of thing. So it still kind of rubs me a little bit in the sense that like he w- wanted to risk it all just because he was kind of homesick. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, there's a part of me that wants to balance that out with, well, the witches did mentally attack this kid. He clearly is just a Padawan. I am curious if this is like his first mission that he's ever kind of been on, sort of thing. He definitely shouldn't have. Well, I can't say he shouldn't have been on this mission. 7 weeks in, you don't know that you're going to be bumping into anybody in here. So maybe I was trying to make excuses for Torben a little bit, but I don't know why that choice of him rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, Torben was a very interesting character for me, as far as I think he's the young Padawan. I guess he's the inexperienced kid on the block. Yeah, and then very vulnerable because Anissa was able to go into his mind, and of course the second time around he's like I blocked I'm disciplined now, I got this. But I think they set it up that way to sort of give Saul an ally as far as
Mm,
his mad desire for whatever reason,
yeah.
to rescue Osha and from the Coven. Well, not maybe rescue. Well, maybe rescue is too strong a word, but at least try to get. He wanted just Padawan, and I do like the way Indira did call him out. It's like is it her wish? Is that your wish?
Yes.
Um, um, and but because that's and again that's where I was just saying some of these things are undercooked because I just never really grasps fully why he was just so obsessed with her, or with. I mean, and maybe it truly is what Indira said, which is it's just his strong, maybe he, and people have, compared him to Qui-Gon in that, he thinks he can teach the Jedi just as well as Yoda and other people on the council. So I mean, I guess in that regard, I guess, Soul is the Qui-Gon of the show. But I think that uh
And you know
the
what's
but
interesting? You know
after.
what's interesting about that, real
Yeah,
quick, Will?
yeah, yeah.
They both want to take a Padawan that's over age.
Mhm.
That in both instances, the council's like, no, like
Yeah,
we don't want you to take them. And they still find themselves in this position. I just thought it was interesting.
yeah, yeah. Well, that even goes back to Luke. Because
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, too old to begin your training.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so I mean, this
absolutely.
is nothing new. I mean, I guess that's the thing. I was seeing some folks in the chat talking about agreeing with some of the things that we're saying about being undercooked and really a project that can unite. I think that's the thing with this IP. Um, we've had we've
Appreciate you coming
been
through Table
fed
Talk.
Yeah, we've been fed so well with things like Empire and Andor, so that whenever you do get things like Acolyte and even Ahsoka, where it's just like, or even Boba Fett, well, with the exception of the Mandalorian,
Boba
something
Fett
that
is like its own tier, man.
yeah,
Boba Fett is like
well,
its own tier.
with the exception of Mando 2.5, uh,
Yeah, yeah.
it's really glaring, and especially whenever, I'm not even gonna compare it to other IP at this point. I'm just gonna compare it to, within Star Wars. And I think that's what was so frustrating about this series. And so to that point though about Saul and Tobin, I think they were trying to set that up. I think Saul really, I think Tobin was, definitely homesick, and I think Saul really, does have that. I guess his own. He call it. He feels too much. Has too much pride. Whatever it is, that I think that was his underlying motivation for wanting to, take these kids and train them, because because he felt he could do it.
Yeah, and again, because I think he is missing a lot of context as to what's really kind of going on. There is a part of me that thinks that there is a part of Soul that really wants to protect these kids. But I think if there's anything that we've learned all season long is that he does have a deep connection to people. He's a very
Yeah,
emotional guy. You know,
yeah,
we've been questioning a lot of his choices, even going back to episode 3 when he hugs May and he's like, I promise you're never gonna feel this way again. I'm like,
mhm,
bro, what are you doing? Like,
yeah,
why are
yeah,
you promising this to her? Right. So he clearly has been giving us hints that he's been this way all along. So not only is he a very emotional and attached Jedi, but he also is running on no context whatsoever. And
yeah,
it's just a really bad, really bad combination.
yeah.
Crystal, what's up, Crystal? Good to see you. Glad you popped up in here this week. I really hope you can join us next week for sure. Table Talk did say, man, I don't see how you guys get to your opinions, but God bless you. Regardless if you like this or not, it's overall not good for Star Wars. I'm hoping someone can save this IP. I don't personally do I think it's I don't know if it's not good for Star Wars, but it definitely has been divisive for fans. He did say, we need someone to unite a majority of fans. I don't want to be the pessimistic person here, but I just don't see it happening. I don't know why, but I just think we just have way too many generations maybe a part of this
Yeah.
franchise that just nobody is gonna like the same thing all the time. And I think that's what Star Wars is or Lucasfilm is really trying to appeal to is like maybe we got something for you here, maybe we got something for you here, maybe we got something for you here. Like I don't think that this is a bad show. Do I think it's a great show? No, I think it's kind of a okay, lukewarmish show. But you know, we have our issues with the show that we talk about on a weekly basis here. As far as how do you guys get your opinions, I think we put our context clues together as to what the episode has given us. I just don't necessarily know if the execution is there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the execution has been the big problem with this series. I mean, there's a
Absolutely.
lot of as we just discussed tonight, there's many good ideas that just as I said earlier, some things are just undercooked, and I think part of it is it's the writing. I think some of it's the editing choices. I mean, speaking talk about editing choices. I mean, look at look at Andor. I'm not going to compare it to House of the Dragon. I mean, House of the Dragon is like next level. Like that's like doctoral level like television versus Acolyte, which is like middle around in high school. So,
Yeah, totally. But I
so
guess
I'm
some
not
people
going
would
to compare.
say though, you're Star Wars, why aren't you getting that level of
But
writer,
yeah,
director? You know what I
but
mean?
I think whenever you talked about the generational thing, I think that's something that that is really a good point because I'm of the age, I'm 50. So I came to it when
You look
with
good for 50,
the
bro.
thank you. I appreciate that. My Star Wars entry point was the episodes 4, 5, and 6. If if you're a millennial, your entry point's to prequels. And so that's what you're basing on. If you're someone who was born in 2000, then your entry point's the sequel trilogy. Um, so I think there is that piece. I do think I think Mando. There are some exceptions. Mandalorian season 1. I agree. It was very solid. Jon Favreau
Yeah, great
did a
stuff.
tremendous job with that show, but I think he had the runway and the to be able to deliver that. Because because
And
by
the
the
big
time we
movie
got
experience too.
yeah, and the movie experience, yeah, I think that's the other aspect of it too. Because I mean, Favreau, he does. And we talked about this last week on the show too. I'm glad you brought up about movies. There is a difference between writing for movies and TV shows. And I know, like for example, with the upcoming, Sean Levy, you know, signing on to do, the Star Wars
Yeah.
Ray film. I think maybe Ray film, maybe not Ray film. But he's a guy who can do both worlds. He's done TV. He can do movie. But some people are only good at TV. Some people are only good at movies, and the there's no cross pollination there. So I think it's a very complex. I think at the end of the day, I'm the type of person where I'm not going to tell someone. I think if you like something, you like something. If you don't like something, you don't like it. That's personal
Yeah,
taste.
that's
It's art subjective, and we just sort of take it as it comes.
yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, very, very much subjective. Let's get into our next segment here, the light side. Let's talk some pros. Let's talk some pros. What did you like about this particular episode? Do you have any breakdowns of things you want to go ahead and discuss here?
Yeah, so light side, like I said, I think the Indira um art with um basically dealing with the witches at first. I think that was checking with the council. Those were the smart things that that a seasoned jet leader would do. It's just like, okay, yeah, I'm out here on this planet. There's a big decision that needs to be made. Let's try to take advantage of that. I do like the perspective of from showing what the Jedi were doing on the planet, why they were there. Getting some of that lore was very very good to have again this week. Um, and as far as other light sides, I think those I think I touched on the other ones that I had for this week. I can't think of any other. None of those really like pop out at this point.
Um, for me, the light side, I really enjoyed the lore building in this episode in the sense of name dropping the hyperspace disaster. If I can get into my nerd bag real quick,
Yeah.
I read a lot of High Republic, um, and so this is definitely a reference to the Light of the Jedi book by
Mhm.
Charles Soule. Here, this is the very first novel that they wind up making for the High Republic. So, if you are interested in diving into this world a little bit more, clearly they mentioned this happens about 100 years before this particular episode. So, this is the very first book out of the High Republic, and this is where the hyperspace disaster happens. They call it the Great Hyperspace Disaster, where they have a cargo ship actually hit something in hyperspace. You come to find out eventually that it is an attack in hyperspace, which is one of the first times anything like that has ever happened, right? So they have a little bit of a mystery to certainly solve themselves. But by this cargo ship exploding in hyperspace during this huge collision, it winds up splitting out of hyperspace and literally just going into vastly different directions into the galaxy. And because of the fact that you've got these big clunks of metal, I mean, you're probably talking like asteroid level kind of, impacts here that are happening at hyperspace speeds, going through space and whatever the case may be, hitting planets, hitting satellites, and really causing sort of like earth shattering kind of levels of destruction. And so for me, I thought it was really cool to find out that Brendok was one of those planets that had to deal with the great hyperspace disaster, clearly having a chunk of that cargo ship hit the planet at some point in time and really destroy all life on it. So it's a pretty epic book. Like for me, I think the pacing of it is incredible, and it just immediately kind of gets me kind of sucked in. So I thought it was really neat that they gave us a nice little novel reference there. Um, I really enjoyed the Master Soul in this episode. I really enjoyed seeing just how emotional of a character he ends up being. Indira winds up calling him like disturbed at one point. You mentioned that even calls out a reason he doesn't have a Padawan yet. Clearly, the idea that he has too much attachment to people and maybe taking this protection mission a little too far. And like I mentioned before, I like a character that has fallibility to him, that has weaknesses. And despite his actions in this episode, it actually made me enjoy Soul as a character a little bit more. I'm not gonna lie. When I see that moment of Soul in here, I don't think he's doing it out of like, I need to kill this woman. I really do think that he clearly thinks that May is Osha. He can't tell
Mhm.
from that far away. But I believe, if anything, the mother, very much to how we see Coral at the end of this episode kind of dissipate and just kind of
Yeah.
into thin air sort of thing. It made me think like she was trying to escape or move or get out of the way or something. So I think Mother Anasayan here was trying to get out of this situation
Yeah.
herself and also May. And in turn, Soul probably thought she was getting ready to attack or whatever the case may be, and wind up killing her. So I thought this was a really great story for Soul in showcasing some things, but I will get to the dark side of that here in just a minute. And then I really enjoyed the conflict between Indara and Soul. Talking about that she had to literally correct him twice on mistaking what he wants for what somebody else wants, I thought was actually pretty eye-opening also. Um, and Also realizing that at the end of the day, when it comes to Anakin along with the twins, at least the Jedi Council is consistent in the idea of like, no, too old, like you said, too old to begin the training, and decided not to go ahead and take them. Had they found out in time that they were in fact a Vergence, because I don't think they found out that they were a Vergence, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I think
I
they
don't think so.
said,
Yeah.
I think they said no, and then Torben wind up confirming that they were in fact a um a Vergence. And then lastly, the inception of Torben's mind, I thought was really cool. I really enjoyed that sequence of seeing Mother Anastasia really tempt him, show some levels of dark side esque abilities to from her in regards to getting him to do what he wants, and the fact that he was kind of weak minded to literally fall to his knees in the sense of like, yeah,
Yeah.
let's go. I thought was pretty interesting, and of course Kalnaka fighting. I thought
Yeah.
the lightsaber battle was pretty impressive. I was waiting for him to kind of rip off somebody's arm in
Yeah.
that battle because he's a freaking Wookiee, but based off of his size, I was really impressed with the fighting that we wind up getting in this episode.
Yeah, that was one of my light sides. I forgot to mention was seeing Kalnaka. It did that was whenever we got these Jedi. I was hoping we would see them, because all the other times that Kanako was just sort of like he was either fixing something or making dinner or whatever it was, but to see him actually in action, even though he was possessed for a moment there, it was still pretty impressive to see that.
And then Table Talk real quick. He says, I hope I helped with the engagement. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Table, for sure. Keep up the good work and enjoy making your podcast, guys. I hope someone makes something we can all enjoy someday. I give you guys thumbs up,
Thumbs up.
even
Yep.
though I hate the Acolyte. Well, we
Appreciate
appreciate,
that.
yeah, we appreciate it, Table Talk, and we appreciate your opinions as well, man. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
yeah. Other light side I just thought of too was the witches. Just seeing the coven and not the sway in and stuff, but just their utilization of the force. In
uh-huh.
particular, yeah. Just this and getting some backstory as far as why they picked that particular castle. Again, just all those little. I know it's a little fine points, but I just really like when they do make a note of like uh, uh, explaining why certain things happen, and also too, just like I guess the castle must be pretty flammable too. I guess getting more context as far as like why did this fire spread so quickly? I mean, I think we did get a little bit more scenes as far as what happened outside of the room that caused it to basically short out everything and cause the whole complex to go up.
I might have to add that to my dark side real quick too. I'll talk about I'll talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit too. But let's get into the dark side elements. Some cons from this week's episode that we weren't necessarily the biggest fans of, that we thought maybe dragged the episode down a little bit. Did you want to go first or what?
I think I've really hit my dark sides earlier. I don't know if I have anything more to add that I haven't already like sprinkled throughout the episode tonight.
Um, I will say, yeah, we've already talked about the dialogue. I didn't necessarily care so much for the dialogue in this episode at times. The Indara and Soul stuff when they're talking, I am a big fan of that. Um, a couple things, dark side wise. Modern music in Star Wars, no, thank you. I don't need it. I don't know if you stuck around for the end credit scene or not, Will, or not the end credit scene, but just the credits in general. Um, music, they got music with lyrics. It just feels very modern. It does take me out of Star Wars a little bit. I don't necessarily know if I needed the music at the end here. Just kind of stick with the orchestra kind of level themed film music, and I'm perfectly okay with it. It almost felt like it was like a soundtrack to the witches' coven, almost. Building off of their ascension. Power of one, power of two, power of many. I think you would have
Oh
loved it,
God.
Will, if you stuck around.
Yeah, I build.
Yeah, if you go back and rewatch the episode, just let the credits roll for just a little bit, and you'll see what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Okay.
I wasn't a fan of the. Just felt like Rihanna doing a version of the Witch's Ascension. Um, Secondly, and we've talked about this before, but this is the episode that just really stands out to me. The episodes end so flat, Will.
Mm,
So
yeah.
flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it also builds upon why I felt like this episode should have come earlier.
Mm,
Because I think there should have been more to this episode, in the
yeah.
sense of give me like 5 more minutes. Like in my notes, I said, I wish they went into a final act having Soul explain his actions
Mhm.
after 16 years, right? Because
Yeah.
this now tees it up for the final episode for Soul to then give additional information. Whereas I really would have liked to have seen the flashback portion end, and we get to see Soul wrapping up his story, talking to May in present day.
Mhm.
There's a question that Indara asks him, in this episode at the end, right? When she really delivers this line in this sense to Saul, in the sense of like, I want you to sit with this question going forward, Saul. And she says, ask yourself why you made this choice.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that feels like the end game for this episode is him answering that question. You've had 16 years to sit back and think about this story. This episode, I think, would have done so much better if they
Hmm.
allowed Soul to be in present day and finally answer that question that Endara asked him. What did you learn out of those 16 years? Have you changed as a Jedi? And then make it sort of that emotional ending for this particular episode. But now we got to wait for all this to drop in one more episode, which is going to be another extended episode. But what, we go from what, 30 minutes to 35 minutes, right? Like,
Yeah.
how does this show end? And
Completely
so,
agree.
and
Completely
so
agree.
it boggled my mind that this episode ended as flatly as it did, and it goes back to the theme of this season that you brought up, right? The choices that these showrunners and writers make, and the execution, and where they place these episodes at. And I think they dropped the ball in the ending of this episode by not giving an exclamation point for the Master Soul to explain what he learned, and
Yeah.
really tell that story to May.
That's an excellent point. I was feeling that too whenever it ended. I was expecting to go back to, because the way episode 6 ended when he says, I have, I got a story to tell you. It would have been nice to have a little epilogue to just put a bow on it, because to me, this episode was, like I said earlier, it does tie up some loose ends, and that's the big loose end that they left hanging there for the finale. And when the finale's got to do so many other things,
So many.
it just sucks that they push that to next week. And honestly, I'm not confident that they'll answer it.
I mean, you might be right. I mean, maybe Saul hasn't learned anything. I mean, the
Yeah,
homeboy is still looking at his holocron
because
of
I mean,
his lost
yeah,
Padawan, like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
still connected like that.
I mean, Chimere's out there. We got, and she did, and Leslie did say there is a clear ending to this story. So maybe that's the ending as far as him answering that question, why he did what he did, and why did they? And I guess the other big piece is what with as I mentioned before, even though it was undercooked as far as Indira making the decision to, again, tell the story from a certain point of view. Um, I guess that's out there. That's hanging out there too, and maybe we'll get that next week. Why she felt it was important, and why did Tobin? I mean, we understand now why Tobin, like, basically, I can't remember what they call what it's called in the Star Wars lore, but the practice of, like, shutting yourself off and
Oh,
levitating. I
mhm.
mean, we understand now why he did that, and we understand, like you said earlier, why Kanaka, it probably just chose to stay on that planet, because again, he's just ashamed as far as what happened, and I think all of them are tortured by holding a secret. Clearly Soul is.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, those are the things that, that are hanging out there, that they've got to answer all of that in a 30 minute, 35-minute finale, and also wrap up what was going on Chimere. And then, now that we know Osha and May are basically the same being, um, will they merge into, the two, will they poof back together? I mean, I don't know. I mean, clearly, whenever they were kids, I mean, it seems like whenever Coral was like, or was it her mom was like starting to dissipate,
Mhm.
didn't they, like, didn't May start to fade away
She started
too?
to, yeah. I think
Yeah,
maybe I was thinking that she was having to try and get them both out of that situation, herself and May. I felt like she was
yeah,
maybe casting some sort of spell to get her out of there.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah,
but I have
so
no
I
idea.
mean, yeah. So I mean, there's all these. I mean, again, that's as I said at the beginning. There's, penultimate. You want to start pulling things together, but just as many
Yes.
things they pulled together, they like open so many more threads that if they do get a second season, maybe they'll pursue it. But.
Yeah, and if I do have a concern for the finale, that's what it is that there are still a lot of threads that I think need to be resolved here. We got to find out how Soul and May are going to handle learning all this stuff. What's Quamir and May's, Osha's relationship like now? Like, are we doing a little bit of a time jump? Are they like in bed together? I know that Crystal would absolutely love that. I'm trying to I'm trying to
Oh,
figure out I'm trying to figure
that's
out
the
like
crystal that, being sweet. That was like that was the membership card was like the best.
I thought it
You
was
need to
pretty
get your
awesome.
card, Crystal. Yeah.
I hope you got it laminated. So I do wonder, like, is it gonna end in some sort of lightsaber battle? What's Vanestra gonna do? How does this end? Like, I wonder, like, is this literally gonna end with May officially becoming Soul's apprentice and Osha becoming Quamir's apprentice, and we end the show on them completely different sides, and like that's it? But then
Yeah.
it just feels like it's a potential for it to not live up to, like, stick the landing as much as I'm hoping for. I don't want to talk negatively about the finale before even getting there, because I don't want to lower my expectations for what or have a certain set of expectations for episode 8. But I would agree with you in the sense that there's a lot to do. I think in this last episode. Real quick, Crystal does say one of her dark side. We got a lot of repeat episode or repeat scenes, I guess,
Mhm.
from episode 3. I will say at least they were shorter a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. They
maybe
could
a
have
little short, but it did
yeah,
feel
they could
like
have put yeah. Honestly, as the one thing I did as I was watching the episode, I did think that this could have easily have been they could have had both perspectives told in the same episode
yeah, I
instead
totally
of
get what you
breaking it up over two,
into
but
2.
like, yeah, just really have both perspectives told in an episode. I mean, yeah, it would have. Now I don't know if they. Well, anyway.
Crystal did say there was only one bed. Just to clarify, over on his island. I love it. What's up, Barry? Appreciate you coming through, man. Retro, what's up, Retro? Hello, just listening in while doing chores. Well, it's always good to have a listen here. So appreciate you coming through, Retro. I hope you I'm kind of curious if you've had the opportunity to check out the Acolyte. What are some of your thoughts so far? And one of my last dark sides, you brought it up, just the fire. You know, I was hoping that would be explained a little bit more than what it was, but it wasn't. Like, I think one of the things we said, there's no way a fire did all of that,
Mhm.
but clearly it did. I mean, they did their best to try and, like, highlight a couple of scenes here or there where they showed like a bunch of machinery,
Yeah.
a lot of moving parts somewhere in this facility. I'm assuming they probably just, I feel like they added scenes like that in post just to be like, oh, we got to explain how this fire, gets all over the place. We need some quick cut scenes to show there's machinery here. Uh-oh, don't burn it up, sort of thing. So it did feel a little bit off to me, and like May still looked as crazy as ever. Like it,
Yeah.
even though we got Coral that kind of pushes her to be angry, to be mad, you can clearly see she does have a brief moment of like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done this. But it's like,
Mhm.
girl, why'd you even deal with fire in the first place? Like, why? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. But I don't
Yeah.
think it made her look any better at the end of the day.
No, no, yeah, yeah. I know John Davis also mentions what was the yellow energy that's I get both episode 3 and this one they did focus in on I guess whatever that torch. I mean, I guess it's just some kind of Star Wars plasma thing that it just got out of hand.
Yeah. All right, so that will do it for our dark side moments here. So now it is the moment of truth. It is report card time for episode number 7. So for those of you who are wondering right now, the show is averaging an 80%. So we're at a B minus right now in regards to our report card for a series overall, just 6 episodes in. But we are at episode 7. So if you were to open up your report card and take it home to your parents and say, Mom, look what episode 7 of the Acolyte scored on our report card, with the legend below, Will, what would
Yeah.
you grade episode 7?
Oh boy. I 79
A C plus?
C plus. You know what? You know what? Our discussion tonight, I will give it a B minus, an 80.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, the show has been average. I mean, yeah, I think B minus, C plus. I mean, I mean, it's that's sort of how I've been feeling about this series overall this season. Great ideas, but wanting on
Bad
the
execution.
execution. Yeah,
I get you. Yeah, I feel like I might be right there with you. Um I was thinking C plus, but I was just like, no, because I did enjoy it. I did
yeah,
enjoy the episode. I thought we got some interesting perspectives. Um,
yeah,
we got John in here. Crystal's giving it a B minus. We got John in here. B says, I think this was the best so far. Um,
yeah.
I can't complain with that. I can't remember I don't remember what I scored episode 3. I think I'm personally might have
Episode,
given out 3 was like a
yeah,
B plus, I
so,
think I gave it.
yeah. It was because episode 3, and even for me, episode 3 was the one I was just like, okay, I think I like where they're going here. I think that's probably one of the higher grades I've given the show this season. Um,
Besides
and that,
episode I think episode 5 was pretty big for you, wasn't it?
yeah,
The
3 and
lightsaber
5 are,
one?
yeah,
Or was that 3 and yeah, 3 and 5, I think.
yeah, 3 and 5, yeah, yeah, 3 and 5 are ones I really, yeah, because I was 3 brought me back in because after the first 2, I was kind of like, I don't know, I might have to, put this one on the get to it when I get to it, but
I think
but
I'm gonna stick B minus 2, but I'm gonna go 82 here. I'm gonna go at
okay,
82. Um, I don't think that's really gonna change too much for us. It's still gonna come out to an 81% at the end of the day, so a B minus on this one.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like I said, I wish it, like as almost wish this one had been aired earlier in the season.
I'm
I really do because
I don't
I was
I'm starting to have doubts now. I feel like I want to change my grade. Um, Let me see. What did I got to find out what I gave episode 3 because I'm trying to think. Did I like this episode more than I liked episode 3? I don't recall if I did or not. Did you like this 3?
I did like 3. Yeah, I mean 3 was the one that kept that basically like rescued me from like pulling from like jumping off with this show. I was like, okay, I see the potential. I see where they're going. And I think my biggest qualms in 3 was the ascension ceremony because yeah. But the story, the things that they were doing, and I think the why I this episode works for me is because it does have good follow-up with the things that the positive aspects that they set up in episode 3. Um, and but again, you know, with all the other caveats that we've discussed tonight.
Yeah, I'll stick with my B. I'll stick with my B minus. I'll stick with my
Yeah.
B minus. I gave episode 3 a B plus, but I think I want to grade this a little bit harsher just because of the fact that it is the penultimate episode, and I think they should have done a little bit more with it.
Mhm.
Um, Oh yeah, Crystal says Adam gave episode 3 an A minus, but she convinced me to bump it down to a B plus. So I'm gonna go. So that's why I gave it a B plus at the end
Yeah.
of for episode 3. So I will go with a 82 B
Yeah.
minus for this episode.
Yeah, I think Crystal bumped it up for me with bringing up the awesome makeup and music. So
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this one will get an 81% overall. So another B minus for this week's episode. So let me go ahead and put that down. So we've got so right now, if people want to keep score, episode 1 a B minus, episode 2 a B minus, episode 3 a B, episode 4 was a C plus, episode 5 an A minus, episode 6 B minus, episode 7 B minus. So I feel like it's
yeah,
kind of
Yeah,
middle of the road.
yeah. I mean, that's
Passable, but middle of the road.
yeah, that's how I feel about this series. I probably won't go back to it after I watch after but it's
You know,
been
it's interesting to me. I almost make it a point to watch the episode twice if I can.
yeah,
One, just to kind of sit with my feelings on the first time around in regards to how do I enjoy it. Second time to get more details and take notes and stuff.
mm,
But the second episode usually tends to give me a better understanding as to how much I really enjoyed the episode
yeah, yeah.
or
Yeah. I
didn't.
think yeah. Whenever I can, I try to do that as well, especially when I'm reviewing it for a pod. But just when it wasn't able to do it this week. But I didn't walk away from this one. Like I said, I had heard some like negative stuff before, but then I went, so I went into it with really, really with really, really low expectations. So when I actually watched it, I was like, oh, this is not that bad.
Yeah, one of my friends, Cody, he sent me a link to Jeremy Johns.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I watched Jeremy saying
he-
Jeremy's gonna need a new liver.
it's I like look, I grew I don't want to say I grew up, but I used to watch a ton of Jeremy. I used to watch a lot of John Campia and a lot of Christian damn, why am I
Harloff.
blanking on
Yeah,
Harloff,
Harloff.
Christian
Oh
Harloff.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
all three don't like this series.
yeah,
And when I
yeah,
when I look at them, I'm like, look at these three old men. They're just lost now in Star Wars.
yeah,
But you know, they I sometimes I will say, like, I was thinking to myself, when Jeremy was I'm like, maybe he's just drinking too much. Like maybe he's just
yeah,
stopped drinking and actually watch the show and pick up some context clues as to what's going on.
yeah,
But I just feel like they are enjoying just busting on this series right now. Like you said, it sometimes it doesn't work for people, and that's perfectly okay. But
yeah,
I do feel like there are times, and I'm not saying that these three do it. Because I have really trusted a lot of their judgment on a lot of other things that I've watched with a lot of their reviews. But I do feel like there is something about the Acolyte that I feel is more hate watch than actually just watching to
yeah,
watch.
yeah.
But maybe I'm
I
tripping.
No, I think you're onto something there. I mean, I think there is that, and Ahsoka had that aspect of it as well. But um, yeah, it's just I just think we're we talked about this last week on the show. I think we're just in a space now where with streaming content, if people people's expectations are pretty high with certain IP,
Yeah,
and
it really is. Yeah.
there's some things that you can there's some shows that you can be that folks will give or be more forgiving on, and there's some things that people are more harsh, and Star Wars is one of those ones that I think is more harsh. Now, I'm talking about legit criticism. I'm not talking
Right.
about
Right.
there's clearly people have issues, and there's agenda review bombing, and and sometimes showrunners don't help themselves also by poking at the fans and not just painting people who are critical in a bad brush. So there's that aspect of it as well. But I do feel that the show, well, honestly, for me, what's been made it was for me, it's just been June's just been we've just been eating well with just TV shows. I mean, between House of the Dragon, The Boys, The Bear, I binged that over Fourth of July weekend, and it's just whenever you're like you're trying not to compare it because they are completely different genres. But then when you see that, like I said, that master class of like the red dragon and the gold, and then you come down and have to watch this. I'm like, gotta make sure I give a few days break.
I will say somebody pointed out to me, and I didn't look. I haven't watched The Bear, but
Yeah,
somebody pointed out to me that those episodes are like 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yep. They are.
So, I mean, to me, when I saw that, I was like, wow, really? And it's just like, we talk about all the time, like, man, these episodes should be longer. These episodes should be longer. Sometimes I'm like, maybe they shouldn't be. Like, maybe,
Yeah,
like maybe the idea of them being longer wouldn't help regardless. I do think maybe you are right in the sense of if it is a little bit longer, maybe you can fit in some more context clues or
mhm,
execute and explain things a little bit better. but I still think you should be able to do that in the amount of time that you want. Even though I want my Star Wars live action stuff to be like 45 sort of plus minutes, you got to use every minute that you're on
Yeah.
television to perfection, and you got to utilize it to grow your characters, explain your story, and allow the viewers to truly understand the story that you're trying to get across. And so, regardless of who you are as a writer or director, 30 minutes or not, you got to be able to tell the story.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
to be able to tell the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, as I remember Brent Spiner years ago. I was watching him whenever Next Generation ended its run on TV, and he said, "If it ain't on the page, it's not on the stage."
I love it. I love it. But yeah, guys, look, that's our review for Acolyte episode number 7, the penultimate, grading it a B minus at an average of 81% here so far. But look, at the end of the day, these are simply our A plus opinions. We always want to know yours. Let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below. And we'll definitely interact with you guys throughout the week until the season finale. Keeping my fingers crossed that they certainly land this, stick this landing here for the finale. I'm really eager to kind of see where they take our characters, how this all wraps up and end. Will we get another lightsaber battle? Will we finally have the master revealed? I think there's a lot of questions certainly left to go. So we'll see how next week goes. But Will, if people want to find you on social media, man, where can they find you?
Yeah, thanks, Adam, for having me on again. I've really enjoyed discussing the show with you each week. You can find Sarah and myself at our on social media on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cena Nerd. We're also on Instagram and Threads, Scene_N_Nerd. We have a page on Facebook, and you can always get our shows wherever you get podcasts. Just always try to get the little arrows. Anyway, www.cinenerdpodcast.com. You can find us Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so right down here below at A Plus Opinions. Very active over on social media everywhere. We also do have a TikTok page at Hero Report. We drop clips from this show along from our weekly show, A Plus Hero Report, over on TikTok as well. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet and you like our discussion and our long form thoughts on these episodes, hit that subscribe button, guys, along with that bell notification. So anytime we go live, you guys will certainly be notified. But we got one more episode left. Shout out to John for certainly coming through once again, Retro Nerd Girl, and of course Crystal Kyber for certainly coming through, and everybody else that certainly joined us live today. Hopefully we'll see you all back next week. Retro Girl, binge this season until next week's episode, so you can join us for some discussion. But that's going to do it for us here. We'll certainly see you guys next week. So until then, do me a big favor, as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A plus. May the force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.